We find our own limits in moments of crisis. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. This ancient insight speaks directly to our modern struggles. This video will show you how to transform personal turmoil into a source of unshakable strength by rediscovering a forgotten form of wisdom. We are not exploring dense philosophical texts. We are reading personal letters, intimate conversations between a mentor and his student. Why does advice written on papyrus 2,000 years ago feel more like a compassionate friend's guidance than a dusty lecture? How can a simple change in format make timeless ideas so immediately powerful? What is the first source of written wisdom you turn to when your own life feels unsettled? A dense philosophical text can feel like a fortress, its ideas locked behind walls of complex language, but a personal letter is a key passed from one hand to another. This was the genius of Seneca's correspondence with his friend Lucilius. He was not composing a formal treatise for scholars. He was writing to one man facing the daily challenges of life, from political pressures to personal anxieties. The letter format transforms abstract principles into practical counsel. It feels less like a lecture and more like a conversation you are overhearing, one so intimate that the advice begins to feel directed at you. Have you ever received a message from a friend during a difficult moment, a note that seemed to understand exactly what you were going through? That is the unique power of this form of wisdom. It speaks directly to the heart, not just the mind. Seneca's words to Lucilius were not about building a perfect system of thought. They were about navigating a specific disappointment, managing a particular worry, or finding strength on a difficult morning. When we read them today, we are not students of philosophy. We are guests in a private dialogue, finding that the guidance meant for one person 2,000 years ago somehow fits the shape of our own modern challenges. The specific worries may change, but the fundamental currents of human emotion do not. 2,000 years later, we still navigate the same core experiences of transition, concern, and the deep unease of not knowing what comes next. This is the timeless soil in which the Stoic letters took root, and it is precisely why their words feel less like ancient history and more like a clear-eyed friend speaking to our present moment. They bypass the centuries because they speak directly to these universal feelings. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who penned his private thoughts not from a place of peace and luxury, but from a military camp. He was leading armies during a long and difficult conflict while a widespread illness moved through the empire. His personal writings, known as his Meditations, were his own practice of Stoic principles, a way to steady his mind amidst the immense pressures of leadership and collective hardship. He was not removed from difficulty, he was immersed in it, and his writing became his anchor. Think for a moment about a recent challenge you faced. Perhaps it was a professional setback, a period of uncertainty about the future, or a personal disappointment. While the details are uniquely yours, the underlying emotion, that feeling of being tested, is a thread that connects you to every person who has ever lived, including a Roman emperor. The Stoics were not offering a cure for these human conditions. They were providing a framework for how to meet them with courage and clarity. A framework that remains startlingly potent because the struggle itself is so deeply familiar. The single most powerful idea in Stoic letters is the dichotomy of control. This is the foundational practice of separating everything in your life into just two categories: what is within your power and what is not. The philosopher Epictetus, whose words we know through the notes of his student Arion, begins his manual for living with this very instruction. Some things are up to us, he wrote, and some things are not up to us. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in a word, whatever is our own doing, are within our control. Our bodies, our property, our reputations, our public offices, in a word, whatever is not our own doing, are not. The letters of Epictetus are a constant training session, a relentless drill in making this distinction until it becomes second nature. Imagine the scenario of a sudden job transition. The event itself, the decision made by a manager or a company board, belongs firmly in the column of things not within your power. The financial uncertainty that follows, the initial surprise, these are powerful external forces. But your own judgment about this event, your decision to see it as a difficult challenge or as a manageable new chapter, that is yours. Your choice to spend the afternoon updating your resume or to process the change constructively, that is yours. The energy you devote to learning a new skill versus the hours spent concerned about the views of others, that is yours. The Stoic letters do not tell you to be without feeling about the change. They train you to place your attention and effort where it can actually make a difference, on your own reasoned choices and actions. This is not a philosophy of passive acceptance. It is a philosophy of fierce and active engagement with the only territory where you are truly the commander, your own mind. By reading these personal correspondences, we are not just learning a concept. We are practicing a mental reflex, learning to catch ourselves when we pour energy into facing circumstances we cannot alter, and instead to focus on steering our own ship. Resilience is not a shield you are born with, but a muscle you build with repetition. The Stoic letters treat this development not as a grand philosophical goal, but as a daily training regimen for the mind, a series of mental exercises designed to increase your emotional endurance. Seneca was particularly focused on a practice he called Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. This sounds serious, but it is not about pessimism. It is about preparation. He advised Lucilius to regularly rehearse in his mind the potential changes and challenges life could present, not to dwell on them in fear, but to soften their initial impact and power. Imagine, for instance, contemplating the possibility of a professional shift before it happens. You are not inviting the event. You are instead sitting with the idea of it, working through the emotional response in the safety of a calm moment, and realizing that even in that scenario, your capacity to choose your response remains intact. This mental rehearsal strips future hardships of their element of surprise, the very thing that often breaks our composure. When a challenge then arrives in reality, it feels less like a sudden disruption and more like a difficulty you have already practiced facing. How do you currently practice building your own resilience? Is it through reflection, through seeking out new experiences, or perhaps through the words you choose when speaking to yourself about a problem? The Stoic letters offer this step-by-step training, turning the abstract concept of strength into a tangible daily discipline. Our greatest power lies not in changing events, but in interpreting them. This is the core of the Stoic concept of perception, a thread woven through every letter and journal entry. We are disturbed, the Stoics observed, not by what happens to us, but by the judgments we attach to those happenings. The event itself is neutral until our mind gives it a label, deciding whether it is a catastrophe or a challenge. The personal letters of Marcus Aurelius are filled with this practice. He writes to himself, "The obstacle becomes the way. A barrier in your path is not an end point. It is the very material you use to build a new path forward." He was not denying the reality of a difficulty. He was training his perception to see the potential hidden within it. Think of a project you poured your heart into that ultimately did not succeed. One interpretation could frame this as a pure failure, a waste of time and effort, but the Stoic practice of reframing would guide you to see it as a learning experience. It provided data on what does not work. It built resilience by testing your commitment. It may have even cleared the space for a better opportunity that you could not have seen while focused on the original plan. The event is the same, the outcome is the same, but the story you tell yourself about it transforms the experience from a source of frustration into a source of strength. This is not about false positivity. It is about a conscious, deliberate shift in perspective that reclaims your agency. Try this today with a minor daily irritation, perhaps a delayed commute or an interrupted plan. Instead of letting frustration be your automatic response, pause for just a moment. Ask yourself, how can I view this differently? Could this delay be a chance for a few minutes of unexpected quiet? Could this change of plan open a door to a different, perhaps better experience? The obstacle becomes the way. A crisis has a way of stripping away the illusion of permanence, revealing the fragile and temporary nature of everything we build. The Stoics met this reality not with denial, but with a profound practice known as Memento Mori, a reminder of our own human journey. In his letters, Seneca approaches this not as a morbid fixation, but as the ultimate tool for creating a life of purpose and urgency. He writes that we are wrong to think of life as long, that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. This is not a message of despair. It is a call to attention. When you truly internalize that your time is limited, the trivial concerns that often consume your mental energy begin to lose their power. The frustration over a minor slight, the anxiety about a future event you cannot control, the hours spent on things that do not truly matter to you, these start to fall away. What if you lived this week as if it were a significant chapter in the story of your life? What conversations would you prioritize? What project would you finally begin? How would you treat the people you care about most? This awareness does not create fear. It creates focus. It forces a clarity that cuts through the noise of daily distractions, allowing you to see what is genuinely important with a startling new perspective. A crisis, in its own painful way, often delivers this same clarity by force. The Stoic letters teach us to cultivate it by choice, to use the thought of life's finitude not as a shadow, but as a light that illuminates our truest priorities in the present moment. Amor Fati, a love of one's fate, is the ultimate expression of this resilient mindset. The Stoic letters guide us toward a profound shift, moving beyond simple acceptance to a genuine embrace of every event, especially hardship, as an essential thread in the tapestry of a complete life. For someone navigating a crisis, this is not about pretending that difficulty does not exist. It is about recognizing that every experience, especially the challenging ones, are the very materials that shape our character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. He was reminding himself that his own capacity could transform any obstacle into fuel for his inner strength. Consider the historical example of the philosopher Musonius Rufus, who was sent into exile. Far from seeing this as an unjust interruption to his life's work, he reportedly treated it as a new opportunity. He began teaching philosophy in his remote location, turning his circumstance into a purpose. He did not just endure his fate, he embraced it, finding within it a different way to contribute and live his principles. This is the profound invitation of Amor Fati. It asks you to look at your own life's narrative and to trust that even the unexpected threads are part of a coherent whole. So here is a small challenge for you to consider. Look at your current situation, at one single source of frustration or difficulty. Can you find a way, even a small one, to practice accepting it not with resistance, but with a sense of purpose? What if this very challenge is the exact training you need for a strength you have not yet discovered? Stoicism was never a philosophy of emotional numbness. The goal was not to build a wall against feeling, but to learn how to navigate the storm without being capsized by it. The letters provide a set of practical tools for creating a crucial moment of space, a brief pause between the trigger of an event and our full-blown reaction. This is where our true power lies, in that small gap. Seneca's letters on anger are a masterclass in this practice. He does not tell his friend Lucilius to never feel the heat of frustration. Instead, he guides him to catch that first spark before it becomes a wildfire. He describes anger as a kind of temporary madness, a force that sweeps reason aside and leaves regret in its wake. His advice is to impose a delay, to wait before acting or speaking. Think of the last time you received a stressful email, one that immediately made your pulse quicken. The modern equivalent of Seneca's advice would be to consciously pause and take a single, deep breath before your fingers ever touch the keyboard to craft a reply. In that brief moment, you are not suppressing your emotion. You are simply giving your rational mind a chance to enter the conversation. You reclaim the authority to choose your response, rather than being controlled by the initial surge of feeling. Can you recall a recent situation where such a pause might have completely changed the outcome of an exchange? That small, intentional space is the very ground where emotional resilience is built, one reasoned choice at a time. Our personal struggles have a way of filling our entire field of vision, making every difficulty feel like the only thing that matters. The Stoic letters offer a powerful tool to correct this myopia, a mental exercise known as the view from above. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this practice, constantly reminding himself to lift his gaze from the immediate pressures of his command to contemplate the vastness of the cosmos. He would write of looking down on the earth from a great height, seeing the sprawling cities as mere clusters of buildings and the endless dramas of human life as fleeting, ephemeral events. Against the backdrop of centuries and the immensity of the stars, his own concerns about reputation or a temporary setback would begin to lose their sharp edge. This is not about dismissing your problems as unimportant. It is about placing them in a wider context where their true proportion becomes visible. That project that did not work out, that difficult conversation that occupies your thoughts, how significant will it feel when measured against the full span of your life, let alone the grand sweep of human history? The view from above shrinks the mountain back down to the size of a manageable hill. The next time a worry begins to dominate your mind, try this simple shift in perspective. Step outside and look at the night sky, or simply close your eyes and envision the countless lives unfolding simultaneously across the planet. Your challenge is real, but it is no longer the entire world. It is a single thread in a massive, intricate tapestry, a perspective that can ease the weight of a difficult moment and return a sense of calm clarity. A crisis has a way of clearing the shelves, stripping life down to its most essential components. We suddenly see with stark clarity what truly matters and what was merely taking up space. The Stoic letters, particularly those from Seneca, champion this clarity not as a desperate measure, but as a voluntary practice for a tranquil mind. He wrote to Lucilius that wealth is the slave of a wise person and the master of a fool, observing that luxury and possessions often become not a comfort, but a heavy burden. They create a web of worry, a constant need to manage, protect, and acquire more, which pulls our attention away from the cultivation of our inner world. This is the call to eliminate excess, not out of poverty, but for the profound freedom it offers. Think about the weight of a cluttered room, how the visual noise can make it difficult to find a single, important item. Now consider a cluttered schedule, filled with obligations that do not align with your core values. The mental energy required to navigate that complexity is immense. By consciously simplifying, by saying no to the non-essential, you are not losing out. You are creating space for what genuinely sustains you. You are increasing your self-sufficiency by reducing your dependencies on external validation and constant stimulation. What is one area of excess in your own life that might be creating mental clutter? Is it a physical possession, a digital habit, or perhaps a commitment you uphold out of obligation rather than true purpose? Identifying this single source of noise is the first step toward the quiet power of a simplified life, a practice the Stoics knew was fundamental to navigating any storm. A quiet room and a private journal might seem like the ideal Stoic setting, yet the philosophy's deepest strength is found in our connections to others. The letters consistently guide us away from isolation and toward our responsibilities within the human community. Marcus Aurelius, while bearing the immense weight of leading an empire, wrote reminders to himself about his duty, stating that his role was to be a man who is occupied with the work of a citizen, fulfilling all of his duties as the hand fulfills its function or the foot fulfills its. He saw his purpose not in solitary contemplation, but in active, thoughtful service to the society he led. This sense of duty provides an anchor during personal turmoil. When your own world feels unstable, focusing on your role as a parent, a friend, a colleague, or a neighbor can shift your perspective from what is happening to you toward what you can contribute. Think of a time of great personal difficulty. Perhaps the one thing that kept you moving forward was the knowledge that someone else was counting on you, that your presence mattered. That is not a distraction from your own struggle. It is a source of stability woven directly into it. Your duty becomes a path forward, a reason to apply your strength when you feel you have none left. What are the roles that give your own life a sense of meaning and responsibility? Is it caring for a family member, contributing to a team at work, or simply being a reliable friend in your community? These connections are not burdens to be escaped in a crisis. They are the very relationships that give us a reason to practice our resilience, turning abstract philosophy into tangible, purposeful action. Seneca called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of difficulties. This exercise has nothing to do with inviting misfortune or dwelling in fear. It is a form of mental inoculation, a way to build your psychological immune system by rehearsing life's potential challenges before they arrive. In his letters, Seneca advised Lucilius to regularly set aside time to contemplate shifts in his position, his belongings, or the people close to him. The goal was not to make him sad, but to make him strong. By facing these possibilities in the safety of his own mind, he could strip them of their power to shock him when and if they ever occurred in reality. Think about a difficult conversation you know you need to have. If you walk into it completely unprepared, your emotions can easily take control. But if you have already sat with the scenario, anticipated the other person's potential responses, and visualized yourself staying calm and articulate, you enter that room with a profound sense of readiness. The event itself loses its element of surprise, the very thing that so often shatters our composure. This is the practical power of premeditatio. It transforms the unknown into the familiar. So here is a simple practice to try. Take a quiet moment and bring to mind a future worry, something that has been lingering in the back of your thoughts. Now, instead of pushing it away, gently pull it forward. Visualize the scenario unfolding in detail, but focus your attention on one thing alone, your own response. See yourself meeting the situation not with panic, but with a steady mind and a clear heart. You are not predicting the future. You are preparing your inner self for whatever the future may hold, building a resilience that is not based on chance but on choice. How much of your peace is dependent on the opinions of others? This question strikes at the heart of a modern anxiety, one the Stoic letters addressed with unflinching clarity. The philosopher Epictetus, in his discourses, framed it with stark simplicity. He said that if anyone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what was said, but answer, the person must be ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these. His point was not about arrogance, but about the utter futility of trying to control the uncontrollable, the thoughts and words of other people. Seeking validation from outside ourselves is like building a house on sand, a foundation that shifts with every changing tide of opinion and judgment. Consider the quiet stress of social media, the constant, low-grade hum of comparing your own behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's curated highlight reel. Each like, each comment becomes a tiny verdict on your worth, a source of endless anxiety because it is a prize you can never truly secure or hold. The Stoic letters guide us to a different source of stability, one built from within. Your character, your efforts, your intentions, these are the things within your power. The applause, the criticism, the fleeting trends of what is popular, these are not. The goal is not to become indifferent to others, but to become so grounded in your own reasoned principles that external praise becomes a pleasant addition, not a necessary fuel for your sense of self. So here is a small challenge for you today. Perform one single act purely for its own sake, with no concern for external recognition. Write a paragraph in a journal no one will ever read. Take a walk simply to feel the air, not to post a picture of the path. Help someone without ever mentioning it. In that small, intentional act, you reclaim a piece of your own peace, building your inner citadel one quiet, self-validated brick at a time. Acceptance in the Stoic sense is not a surrender of your power, but a strategic reclamation of it. This is the critical distinction between passive resignation and the active, clear-eyed acknowledgement that Epictetus championed. He instructed his students to make the best use of what is in their power and take the rest as it happens. This is not giving up. It is the profound act of discerning between the immovable object and the path you can still choose to walk around it. Think of a sailor on the open sea. The wind is a reality entirely outside of her command. She cannot stop it, change its direction, or demand that it be calmer. A sailor who did not understand this might exhaust herself struggling against the gale, using up her strength in a fight she cannot win. A wise sailor, however, first accepts the wind. She acknowledges its force and its direction without judgment. Only then can she adjust her sails, using that very same wind to navigate a new course toward her destination. Her acceptance of the unchangeable is what grants her the freedom to act with intelligence and purpose. What is one unchanging reality in your own life? A circumstance you have perhaps been quietly wrestling with. It could be a past event that cannot be altered, a particular limitation you carry, or a global situation far beyond your personal influence. Can you, just for today, practice setting down that internal struggle? Not to approve of the circumstance, but to stop exhausting your energy by resisting its existence. This act of acceptance is the first and most vital step in redirecting your effort toward the sails you can still adjust, the course you can still chart through the waters of your own life. The day is over, but its lessons are just beginning to speak. Seneca would close his evenings with a quiet ritual of self-examination, a practice he described to Lucilius as holding a kind of court over his own mind. He would ask himself a series of simple yet powerful questions, not to dwell on what went wrong, but to learn from his experiences and plan for a better tomorrow. What progress did I make today? He would inquire. What unhelpful pattern did I choose to move beyond? In what way am I stronger? This nightly review was not an exercise in self-criticism. It was a method for turning every single day, no matter how difficult or ordinary, into a stepping stone for personal growth. he was essentially gathering from his own life the raw material of wisdom. The goal was to notice where he had acted out of alignment with his values, not to linger on the moment, but to understand its origin and resolve to choose more wisely next time. This transforms life itself into a continuous classroom. Think of it as a gentle debrief for your own spirit. A modern version of this practice can be as simple as asking yourself 3 questions each night. First, what is one thing I did well today where I acted with patience, courage, or kindness? This builds on your strengths. Second, where did I fall short of my own standards, perhaps by reacting with frustration or avoiding a necessary task? Acknowledge this without judgment, simply as information. And third, based on this reflection, what is one small adjustment I can make tomorrow? This final question turns insight into a practical plan for the next day. Try this 3-question review for just 1 week. Keep a small notebook by your bed or simply spend a few quiet moments in thought. You may find that this simple act of looking back with gentle curiosity begins to change how you move forward, bringing a new level of intention to each waking hour. The deepest cuts are not always visible to the eye. Grief is a universal language of the human heart, a territory we all must walk through at some point in our lives. The Stoic approach to this profound experience is often misunderstood. It is not a cold command to feel nothing, but a compassionate framework for navigating the pain without being completely submerged by it. We can see this tender wisdom in a letter from Seneca to his friend Marcia, who was enduring the passing of her son. He does not tell her to cease her tears or to forget her child. Instead, he gently guides her toward a remembrance that honors the love without being overwhelmed by the sorrow. He writes of the need to let reason sit beside grief, not to replace it, but to ensure the sadness does not transform into a lasting state that separates her from the world and from the memory of the one she loved. The Stoic distinction lies between a grief that is a natural expression of love and a grief that becomes a form of living absence, a shadow that dims every remaining day. How do we honor a profound transition without allowing it to dismantle the very life we are still meant to live? The letters suggest that we honor those who came before us, not by mirroring the finality of their journey in our own spirits, but by living in a way that would make them proud, by carrying the best of their influence forward into our own actions and choices. This is not moving on, it is moving forward with their memory as a part of our strength, a quiet companion on the road ahead, rather than a weight that anchors us to a single, painful moment in the past. This ancient division between what we command and what we do not finds a powerful echo in the modern therapist's office. The foundational practice of Stoicism did not remain locked in the past. It quietly shaped one of the most effective forms of psychological help available today. Cognitive behavioral therapy, often called CBT, operates on a remarkably similar principle: that our emotional distress is not caused by events themselves, but by the beliefs and interpretations we attach to them. A sudden shift at work does not directly create anxiety, rather, it is the thought that this change is a catastrophe that generates the feeling of panic. Both the Stoic teacher and the modern therapist guide us to identify that automatic thought, to hold it up to the light of reason and to ask, is this truly within my control, and is this judgment actually serving me? The founder of CBT, Albert Ellis, openly credited the Stoic philosophers as a direct inspiration for his work. He saw in their letters a practical system for mental well-being, a way to question the irrational beliefs that cause so much of our emotional difficulty. This is not a coincidence, it is a validation. It shows that the wisdom contained in those personal letters was not merely poetic, it was profoundly and practically correct about the architecture of the human mind. The same tool that helped a Roman civil servant manage his worry about political fortunes is now a core technique for helping people navigate the complexities of contemporary life. The format was a personal letter, but the insight was a universal key, one that modern science has now confirmed. Anger arrives like a sudden storm, a flash of heat that clouds our vision before we even know what has happened. Seneca dedicated an entire volume to this single emotion, not to condemn its existence, but to provide a practical manual for disarming it. He wrote that the greatest remedy for anger is delay, to give yourself a moment before the first spark can become a wildfire. The goal is not to never feel the initial surge of frustration, but to intercept it before it takes command of your actions. Imagine you are driving and another car moves abruptly into your lane. The immediate jolt of adrenaline, the tightening in your chest, the sharp word that forms on your tongue, this is the natural, raw response. The Stoic practice begins in that very second. Instead of reacting instantly or raising your voice, you take one deliberate breath. You recognize the physical signal, your own clenched jaw, as the first warning sign. You then apply Seneca's wisdom, imposing a brief pause. In that small space, you reclaim your reason. You remember that the other driver's action is outside your control, a fragment of the day's events, but your own response is entirely within your command. To choose calm is not to be weak, it is to exercise a profound strength. What is the very first sensation you feel when frustration begins to rise? Is it a flush of heat, a tension in your shoulders, or a change in your breathing? Identifying that initial signal is the first and most crucial step in learning to navigate the storm. Courage in the Stoic sense is not a fearless heart, but a heart that acts in spite of its fear. It is the decision to move forward with what is right, even when your hands are unsteady. The Stoic letters reframe courage as a form of loyalty, loyalty to your principles when every instinct pulls you toward safety and silence. Marcus Aurelius captured this duality in a powerful metaphor, writing that the soul of a person does harm to itself when it turns away from any event, or does anything contrary to justice, or is overwhelmed by what happens to it. It is a lion, he implies, when it acts with purpose, not a hare that flees at the first sign of uncertainty. The lion feels the same risks as the hare, but its response is rooted in a different kind of strength. We see this lived courage in the story of Epictetus, a Roman senator and Stoic who continued to speak his truth in a political climate grown hostile and difficult. He understood the likely outcome of his defiance, yet he chose to uphold his integrity, demonstrating that courage is not the absence of consequence, but the presence of conviction. His story, and countless others like it, remind us that the greatest challenges are often faced not on distant fields, but in the quiet moments of choice within our own lives. Where is one small corner of your world where fear currently holds a whisper of influence? It might be the hesitation around a difficult conversation you have been avoiding, or the uncertainty around starting a project that feels too large. This week, consider choosing one such fear and meeting it with a single, principled action. You do not need to face the lion all at once. Simply take one step toward it, proving to yourself that your courage is not defined by a lack of fear, but by your willingness to act alongside it. Self-discipline is the ultimate act of self-care. This is the quiet revolution the Stoic letters invite us to join. A practice where saying no to a fleeting desire becomes a profound way of saying yes to your own long-term peace. Epictetus framed this with his characteristic clarity, stating that no man is free who is not master of himself. He was not talking about a life of harsh deprivation, but about the liberation that comes from not being pulled by every passing whim and emotion. When you are pulled by your impulses, your sense of calm is always conditional, always waiting for the next comfort, the next distraction, the next moment of external approval. True freedom, in the Stoic sense, is the inner space you create when you are no longer directed by these internal forces. Think of maintaining a healthy routine on a day when your energy is low and your mood is heavy. The impulsive part of you asks for an easier path, to skip the walk, to choose the quickest comfort. But the disciplined part, the part that has practiced self-care, understands that the real nourishment lies in the action itself. That short walk, that healthy meal, is not a difficult task you place upon yourself. It is a gift you give to your future self, an investment in your own stability. This is the subtle shift in perspective the letters provide, turning discipline from a heavy duty into a form of deep self-respect. What is one impulsive habit that, if mastered, would bring you more peace? Is it the reflex to check your phone when you feel a moment of boredom, the tendency to speak in haste, or the choice to stay up too late seeking distraction? Each time you gently redirect that impulse, you are not limiting your freedom. You are building it piece by quiet piece, reclaiming the authority over your own inner world. The sting of injustice can feel like a heavy weight, settling into your thoughts and threatening to reshape your sense of self. We often encounter this not in sweeping historical tales, but in the quiet, personal letdowns and the subtle unfairness woven into everyday life. The Stoic letters offer a powerful response to this weight, not by ignoring the hurt of the wrong, but by shifting how we see the entire situation. Their guidance remains remarkably clear. The most vital thing is not what happened to you, but the person you decide to be going forward. Marcus Aurelius, who navigated endless political maneuvering and personal disloyalty, wrote a simple reminder for himself each day. When you rise in the morning, tell yourself, the people I meet today may be difficult, ungrateful, arrogant, or dishonest. They are this way because they struggle to see what is truly good. His aim was not to foster cynicism, but to build a deeper, more compassionate understanding. Viewing an unjust person as someone who is simply mistaken, acting from their own inner confusion, transforms the nature of the conflict. It shifts the problem from being a personal assault on you to a reflection of their own lack of clarity. This point of view does not excuse the action, it simply removes its power to define your own character. Imagine a situation of professional unfairness, where a coworker claims credit for your effort or an opportunity goes to someone less qualified. The immediate, visceral reaction is often frustration and a strong urge for things to be set right, to reveal the truth and see fairness restored. The Stoic approach invites a more challenging and ultimately more liberating question. How can I act with integrity in this moment, even when the circumstances lack it completely? This could mean calmly and professionally noting your own contributions for clarity, without engaging in harmful talk or a public display meant to shame another. It means valuing the quality of your own work as its own reward, even when it goes unseen. Your personal integrity becomes the one thing the unfairness cannot diminish. The true test, then, is not about getting even, but about remaining true to yourself. Can you move through a deep unfairness without letting it close off your heart or lower your own standards for what is right? Your character, in the end, is the only ground you have complete authority over, and it is the one reward no outside force can ever take away. A profound gratitude for what you already possess is the quiet reward for contemplating its temporary nature. The Stoics called this Premeditatio malorum, but its ultimate purpose is not fear. It is a deep and immediate appreciation for the present moment. Seneca advised his friend to remember that all we cherish, from the people we love to our own health, is only on loan to us. He wrote that we should love all our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them for all time. This is not a summer exercise. It is a mental shift that transforms ordinary life into a source of constant wonder. By consciously imagining the absence of something, we are suddenly able to see its presence with startling clarity. That first sip of morning coffee, the reliable sound of a friend's voice, the simple comfort of a warm room on a cold day, these are the treasures we overlook precisely because they are so familiar. The practice of negative visualization polishes away the dullness of habit, allowing the inherent value of our everyday lives to shine through. This week, try a simple exercise each night before you rest. Name 3 ordinary things from your day that you are grateful for. Do not reach for the grand or the dramatic. Choose the mundane, the easily missed, the texture of a favorite blanket, the taste of a meal, the few minutes of quiet you found in a busy afternoon. By naming these small gifts, you are training your attention to spot the abundance that was always there. This daily ritual does not change your circumstances, it changes your eyes, and in doing so, it gently lessens the power that the fear of loss once held over your peace. Our digital world hums with a constant, low-grade sense of urgency. The endless scroll of news, the curated perfection of social feeds, the persistent ping of notifications, this environment creates a unique form of psychological static. It feels like a crisis of attention, a quiet wearing away of our mental space. The very principles that anchored the Stoics in ancient Rome, preserved in their personal letters, offer a surprisingly effective antidote to this modern overwhelm. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself about the importance of ignoring the chatter and distraction of the court, the rumors and idle talk that could pull him from his purpose. He advised himself not to waste the remainder of his life on thoughts about others when he was not thinking with reference to some aspect of the common good. His world was one of political intrigue, ours is one of digital noise, yet the challenge to our focus is fundamentally the same. His meditations are a guide for protecting your inner self against the endless flow of external impressions. The core Stoic practice of distinguishing between what is within your power and what is not becomes incredibly powerful here. You cannot control the content of a news alert or the post of a stranger, but you hold absolute authority over your attention, your consumption, and your response. This is the modern application of limiting desires, not for material things alone, but for the constant stream of information and validation that the digital world offers. The urge to check, to compare, to know, is a desire that, left unexamined, can leave us feeling perpetually empty and anxious. So here is a challenge, a digital pause built on Stoic ground. For just one day this week, create a single, intentional space of quiet. This is not about abandoning technology, but about reclaiming your sovereignty over it. Choose 1 hour, perhaps in the morning or evening, where you consciously disconnect. Silence your phone, close the laptop, and step away from the screens. In that hour, do not strive for productivity. Simply be present. Take a walk without a device, read a physical book, or just sit with your own thoughts. The goal is to practice being the commander of your attention, to feel what it is like to not be pulled by an external current. You are not missing out. You are tuning in to something far more vital, your own inner stillness. How do your current digital habits shape the landscape of your mind? Do they cultivate a garden of calm, or a field scattered with the fragments of other people's opinions and curated lives? The choice of where you place your attention is, and has always been, the most important choice you make. Your own mind is the one place no outside storm can ever truly enter. Marcus Aurelius described this sanctuary as an inner citadel, a fortress of character and reason that remains unshaken even when the world outside is in turmoil. He wrote in his meditations that the soul becomes a fortress when it withdraws into its own self-sufficiency, and no external force is more powerful than this inward peace. This is the ultimate promise held within the Stoic letters, that our core self, our capacity for reasoned choice and moral integrity, is inviolable. It cannot be taken from you, it can only be surrendered. Imagine a person working in an environment filled with gossip and shifting loyalties. The pressure to conform, to join in the criticism, or to compromise a personal value for temporary gain can be immense. Yet this individual chooses to remain grounded in their principles, offering fair judgment and quiet honesty regardless of the surrounding noise. They are not building a wall against their colleagues. They are fortifying a space within themselves, a place where their self-respect is the highest law. Their actions are not determined by the chaos around them, but directed from the calm center they have cultivated. What would you identify as the unshakable principles of your own inner citadel? Is it a commitment to kindness even when met with irritation, a dedication to truth in a world of exaggeration, or perhaps the simple resolve to treat yourself with compassion on a difficult day? These are the stones with which your personal fortress is built. No external event, no criticism, no sudden change can dismantle it, because its foundation rests entirely within your own reasoned choice. This is the profound and lasting gift the Stoics offer, the knowledge that you already possess the materials for an unassailable peace. The quiet strength of Stoicism is often mistaken for an absence of feeling, but the letters reveal a profound commitment to compassion. These philosophers understood that we are fundamentally social beings, and that our highest purpose is found in our connection to others. True virtue, in their view, was not a solitary pursuit of perfection, but an active engagement with the human community. Marcus Aurelius put this directly when he wrote, "To move from one unselfish action to another with God in mind. For the rest, remember only that you are bound to love and help your fellow men." This is not a suggestion, but a core duty of a reasoned life. The Stoic ideal is to act for the common good, to see your own well-being as intertwined with the well-being of those around you. This is not about being emotionally overwhelmed by another person's hardship, which the Stoics saw as a kind of shared difficulty. It is about offering clear-eyed, practical help from a place of stable inner strength. Imagine a friend is navigating a challenging personal time. The emotionally overwhelmed response might be to absorb their anxiety, to spiral alongside them in shared worry. The Stoic response, grounded in compassion, is different. It is to listen deeply, to offer a specific and practical form of support, perhaps a simple meal or help with a necessary task, while maintaining your own emotional balance so you can be a true anchor for them. Your calm becomes a resource, not a wall. Your reasoned compassion allows you to see what is actually needed, rather than reacting to the surface level of the distress. How can you practice this kind of grounded empathy in your own life this week? Where is an opportunity to offer not just sympathy, but specific, practical support to someone, while consciously maintaining your own inner steadiness? This is the Stoic art of helping without losing yourself, a practice that strengthens both the giver and the receiver. A quiet transformation happens not in a single moment, but across thousands of ordinary days. Stoicism was never intended as an emergency kit you open only during a storm. It is the slow, deliberate work of building a home that can withstand any weather. This is the long game of character, a lifelong project documented with raw honesty in the personal letters of Seneca. He does not present himself as a finished sage, but as a man constantly at work on his own soul, confessing his own ongoing struggles with frustration, with pride, with the small distractions of daily life. His letters to Lucilius are the record of this effort, a real-time chronicle of someone trying, stumbling, and trying again to become a better version of himself. This long-term perspective is profoundly comforting when you are in the middle of a challenge that feels endless. The difficulty is no longer a sign that you are failing at philosophy, but the very material you are meant to work with, the resistance that strengthens your resolve. Your current situation, however deep it may feel, is not a disruption to your life story. It is a critical chapter in the development of your character. What kind of person do you want this experience to help you become? This single question can reframe your entire journey. It moves you from being a passive recipient of circumstance to the active author of your own growth. Perhaps you want to emerge from this period with a deeper patience, a more grounded courage, or a greater capacity for compassion. Every difficult moment then becomes a choice point, a chance to practice the very virtue you wish to cultivate. The goal is not to achieve perfection by a certain date, but to look back over the arc of your life and see a person who became stronger, wiser, and more resilient because of the very things that once seemed only to test them. The words on the page were never meant for publication, but for personal survival. This is the final, quiet secret of the Stoic letters. When Seneca sat down to write to Lucilius, he was not merely teaching, he was actively practicing his own philosophy, using the very act of writing as a tool to steady his own mind. The letter format forced a clarity that silent thought could not achieve, translating turbulent feelings into reasoned sentences. Each piece of advice given was a principle he himself needed to hear, each observation a truth he was working to internalize. We are not reading a polished doctrine, but a real-time record of a human being tending to his own spirit through the discipline of articulation. This is why the letters feel so alive, so immediate. They are not a prescription from a doctor who has never been ill. They are the shared notes from someone who is also on the path toward understanding. The resonance we feel across 2,000 years comes from this shared openness, the universal need to make sense of our own inner world. A modern equivalent of this reflective practice is not found in a book, but in the simple, private act of keeping a journal. The blank page becomes your Lucilius, a silent confidant to whom you can explain your concerns, your challenges, and your hopes. The process of writing them down brings a kind of order to the swirl of emotion, separating what is within your influence from the noise that is not. You begin to see your own thought patterns, to notice the beliefs that cause so much of your unease, and to gently reframe them, just as the Stoics did. This is not about creating a literary masterpiece. It is about creating a space for your own clarity. The power of writing to support the spirit lies in this gentle process, the act of turning a confused feeling into a clear sentence, and in doing so, reclaiming a small piece of your own inner calm. This entire journey through the Stoic letters returns us to their most human quality, their profound intimacy. We have not been studying a rigid system, but listening in on a conversation that teaches us about control, resilience, and the power of our own perspective. The ultimate gift of this wisdom is not an escape from crisis, but a reliable compass for navigating through it, transforming our challenges into the very material of our strength. Seneca captures this enduring promise in a single, luminous idea, writing that a great mind is one that can make its own goodness anywhere. Your circumstances do not create your peace, your mind does. This is the final, liberating insight offered by these ancient pages. To truly feel their power, consider reading one for yourself. A wonderful starting point is Seneca's letter on the shortness of life, a short yet profound meditation that feels as though it was written for our own hurried era. As you close this video, we would love to hear from you in the comments below. What is one piece of Stoic wisdom that has helped you navigate a difficult moment? By sharing your experiences, we build a modern community of practice, continuing the very same conversation that began 2,000 years ago.